sounds like there's a lot of warriors on the line, which is exciting. And it's interesting how some people said their name was a warrior instead of their actual name. So that's great. We got people from all over the country, from New York to Washington, in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver. So this is very exciting. And I know we have a few people on the line from overseas because we did get some emails in from them. And it is midnight or in the middle of the night for some of them, so this is very exciting. A couple things, some rules for the teleclass. Just want to make sure you're on a landline and not a fax line, because sometimes that creates some noise on the line for us. And you may want to have a paper and pencil on hand so you can take some notes, because there's going to be lots of very valuable information. And just wanted to welcome you again to the Millionaire Mind Show live with T. Harv Eker and his millionaire guest. And so those of you that are on this call, it's because you purchased 10 or more books for the big launch we had back in March. And we want to first thank you for helping take Harv and the book to #1. And I know Harv always likes to say that it's not his book, it's everybody's book. It's your book, and it's everybody's book, because it's going to help change the world, and the more people that know about it, the better. So thank you very much for helping take that book to #1. And we really hope you're going to enjoy this call. It's going to be very exciting. And Harv, if you're on the line, I'll let you take it away.
No, I'm not on the line.
Oh, you're not? Darn. Okay, I just walked away a bit. Welcome, Harv.
Hey, thanks. Thank you so much. So welcome, everybody, to the Millionaire Mind Tele-Show. We're calling this a Tele-Show. And as you know, my name is T. Harv Eker, and I will be your host for this exciting hour. And I want to thank you also for your time, and thank you for supporting the book. Again, we went to #1, USA Today, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. It's been quite a ride, and in fact, I just met with my book agent again today in Los Angeles. We had lunch, and you know, there's a lot of other publishers out there that are very excited about what we've done and what we hit on, and lots of offers are coming in, so lots of good things happening here, and we're looking at possibilities of the next book and when that might come out and things like that. So anyways, again, Michelle's right. I do count it everyone's book, at least everyone from Peak Potentials, because we all made it happen. And I actually count on you for inspiration, believe it or not. You got to get it somewhere, and there's only so much that I can do on my own. And literally, it was my declarations at some of these major events, like Warrior and Wizard, were My Still Heart of Gold, were actually, you know, for my breakthrough event, declared and committed to writing a #1 best-selling book. And just goes to show you the power of commitment and the power of intention. I've really been hot on this intention subject for the last little while. I just can hardly believe it myself. I really believe that when you grow yourself, one of the greatest things about growing yourself and working on yourself is that when you can get to a certain level, I think that one of the ways you actually get to see how far you've grown is by how quickly your intentions manifest. And I'm really beginning to witness this now, and it goes faster and faster and faster. And you know what? When I fall down myself and how I'm feeling about myself and things like that, when I'm not 1,000% confident, which happens sometimes like everybody else, I notice that my manifestation skills become a lot slower, and that my intentions are a lot slower. So literally, you can tell by how quickly you can manifest things as to how you're growing. I hope that makes sense to you. Anyways, I'm very, very excited because, you know, believe it or not, this isn't a normal seminar. It's a little more like a tele-show, I guess. You call it like a radio show, but it's on the telephone. And we have a pretty different format, I guess you'd want to call it, because each week, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be examining the minds of rich people, millionaires, multimillionaires, and billionaires. And not just for the strategies, but for their financial success, but the thinking behind the strategy, the thinking behind the wealth. Again, I really believe, even more than ever, that your money blueprint, how you think, will determine your financial success. Everything is a result of that. And the more people I meet and the more I do this, you know, normally you'd think after a couple of years of talking about the blueprint and the millionaire mind, and you know, a person like myself, usually I get bored of things very quickly. I'd get really bored of it. I'll tell you what, I am less bored. I am more excited about it now than ever. I am totally passionate about this. I've seen the results. every single night when I do the Millionaire Mind evening or wherever city I'm in, if we've done the event before, people buying the book, literally, when people are getting their autographs for their book, I cannot believe one after the other, hundreds and hundreds of people telling me what's happened for them since they started doing this work. And I hope you feel the same way. But literally, you, again, have hit the jackpot. This is the root cause of success. And if you stay with the growth in yourself, if you stay with the growth in your own mind, and you can manage your own mind, I guarantee you will become successful. And that's really what it takes. So the format of this show, again, is talking to millionaires, billionaires, and literally learning what makes them tick from the inside out. And again, we'll even be discussing their money blueprint so you can see what they learned when they were young and how it affected them and how they might have turned it around. Again, environment is very, very powerful. In fact, my guru, Yogananda, said environment is stronger than willpower. And so the way I see it is that I kind of pretend is that if you hung out with rich people most of your life, there's a good chance you'd probably end up rich. They say that you're going to end up basically within 10% of your closest associates in income. So if you hung out with rich people, you'd probably end up rich. So in this show, you're going to get a chance to hang out with rich people, extremely wealthy people, and literally get a chance to hear how they think. I hope you're going to enjoy it. Also, if there's some time near the end, we might be able to answer a few of the questions that have been emailed in from some great people, and we'll do our best to do that, and we'll take that from there too. So, like I said, one of the great things I'm very proud to be able to do is I've got some wonderful associates and friends that I've met along the years, and I'm going to be bringing a few of these people on for you to meet. I want to introduce my first guest, and actually it's our inaugural guest of the four. And literally, this gentleman has over 30 years of a variety of different businesses and investment experiences. He's actually started over 15 different companies. He's negotiated hundreds of million-dollar-plus deals. All told, he's raised over $1 billion of financing for business ventures that he's been involved with. And he's done small business deals. He's done multi-million-dollar deals on Wall Street. He's been involved in businesses of every kind, from car washes to cable companies. He knows business and investing from every single angle, from raising money to start or refinance a business, to operating a business, to evaluating businesses, to buy and sell, to investing in businesses and in the markets. In fact, my good friend Robert Kiyosaki, the author of best-selling Rich Dad, Poor Dad books, he acknowledges this gentleman in the foreword of his book for his financial wisdom and all his help. Most important thing is the result. The result is very simply this. He's rich, okay, and didn't have it handed to him on a silver platter. So how about a big welcome, Mr. Keith Cunningham. Keith, thanks for being on.
Thank you, Harv. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much. So, let me start with something pretty simple here. And are you rich?
Yes. Yes, and I'm smiling when I say it.
An unequivocal yes. It's very funny that sometimes when you talk about money to certain people, they get really shy and whatnot. But I find that, most rich people, they're pretty proud of the fact, and they're not going to put it over top of anybody. But generally, they haven't got a problem saying that they're rich. What do you feel about that?
I agree with that. I don't have a problem with saying it. On the other hand, I don't want to say it too loud because then all my friends that don't have any money come up and want to have some.
Okay, that's okay. That's definitely part of your blueprint. You know what? Take a couple of minutes here and run us through a bit of your background, a bit of your past, where you came from, where you grew up, what was your family situation like, a couple of jobs, businesses that you went through, especially when you were young.
My background is I grew up in Houston, Texas, to a very middle class family. My parents were very frugal around the subject of money. They didn't buy things that they couldn't afford. They in fact, as I was growing up, the only thing I think we ever borrowed money for was a house that we lived in. But I learned at an early age. One of the things my parents taught me that I've always been grateful for is they taught me the value of money because they at a very young age, probably 9 or 10 years old, we started having to do errands around the house and mowing the grass, and for that we got, a quarter or 50 cents or $1 or something like that, and we basically had to earn our allowance. And the allowance was to be used for anything that we wanted that was extra, and as it turns out, almost everything was extra. and so we learned at a very early age the value of money. I actually started, Harv, my first business when I was 11 years old. I started delivering eggs because my grandmother had a little farm outside of Houston, and she had chickens, and I started delivering extra eggs that she had from her little chicken farm to my neighbors in our neighborhood in Houston. And I bought the eggs from my grandmother for a quarter a dozen, and I sold them to our neighbors every Saturday for 50 cents a dozen. And within about a year and a half, I was selling 500 or 600 dozen eggs a week to our neighbors.
And how old were you then?
I was 12 years old.
And you were selling a couple of 100 dozen eggs a week?
I was selling about 500 dozen eggs a week to our neighbors. And so, here's a 12-year-old kid who's knocking down, $100, $150 a week, and it would be in 1962. Because I'm 55 years old today, so
that'd be like about $1,000 a week.
Oh, I was rich. I'm telling you, I was rich. It was the greatest thing that ever happened. And after about 2 weeks, my dad comes to me and says, Keith, you need to start keeping track of your money. And this is a very powerful lesson. And he actually gave me a ledger that he got from his office, and the ledger was, just a real simple accounting. It basically said, here's how much came in, and here's what you spent it for. And at the end of every week, I had to show him where my money went. And I'll never forget, on the front cover of this ledger, there was a picture of a 3-masted 18th century sailing vessel, and it was listing real hard, like it was about to sink, and the caption underneath this picture was, "A small leak sinks a great ship, Benjamin Franklin." Mm-hmm. And that was a very powerful lesson to me that I got when I was 12 years old. I started buying stocks with my extra money because my dad had he was with AT&T and had a way for us to be able to invest our extra money through. So
was your dad, and did he do some investing at the time?
No, he basically had a pension and a profit sharing. Not really a profit sharing. It was a matching fund, so that if he set aside 5% of his salary, AT&T would match it, and then he could buy AT&T stock at a discount. And I got to own some of that stock. So by the time I went to college, I had saved up enough to pay for my own college.
Let me ask you this, Enki. That's great. And let me ask you this. We talk a lot, as you know, about the money blueprint, and that's really how did you get conditioned when you were young? For what were you conditioned, and how has that affected your life? So there's 3 arenas that we talk about. We talk about verbal programming. What did you hear when you were young? We talk about modeling. What did you see when you were young, especially from your parents? And we talk about specific incidents, things that occurred for you when you were young. Like obviously certain ones are already coming out. For example, your parents were quite frugal, yes? And so did you feel that, do you consider yourself frugal at this point? What would you say?
I would say I probably am, considering how much I could spend, but how much I don't spend. So,
right. Would you say that was one of the keys that allowed you to amass the wealth that you've amassed, the fact that you are based in frugality and you don't spend just, an immediate gratification right away? Would you say that?
I would say there's no question about that. One of my core beliefs is that you can either create a lifestyle or you can create wealth, but it's difficult to do both. Mm-hmm. So I mean, although I have a very nice lifestyle today, I haven't always had that lifestyle, especially when I was first getting started, and the lifestyle that I have today is way, way less than what I could do if I wanted to, but it's a whole lot better than average as well.
You know what? Let's make sure that everybody gets this lesson right away, because that's one of the things you and I have in common. I wouldn't say that I would probably say that I am closer to frugal than a spender by any stretch. And certain things. I don't pinch pennies, but I don't like to get ripped off. You know, I feel like the closest person I've ever heard talk about this is actually Oprah, who feels exactly the same way. You know, she could spend. She's one of the richest people on the planet. She could easily spend $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 on a purse if she wanted to, and yet when she sees a purse that's on sale and she says it's a good buy, she goes for the one that's on sale. Or and I feel the same way. Like, for example, I just came in on a limo from LA to Phoenix just now to my home, and literally the guy said when they told me at the when I ordered the limo that it would be $68 plus a tip, you know, comes to $78 or $80, and I said fine. And then when the limo guy dropped me off, he said it's $72 plus the tip. Right. And I said, no, your dispatch said it was going to be like $65 or $68. And he says, no, you live a little further away than the resort, so it's an extra $5. And I said, well, you know what, that's great, and you can tell them that I'm never going to use them again. Yeah. And it was like, you know, it really burnt my butt. You know, hello. I mean, I could say $5. What do I care, $5? But you know what? To me, $5 is $5, and I still remember when I was a kid, $5 is $5. So I would say that one of the things we have in common, and a lesson for everyone to really take hold of this, and this happened again this morning on a TV show I was on, is the understanding about the difference between that rich people look at every dollar as a seed that could be invested to bring home $20 or $100 or $1,000, and most other people, you know, like you say, they look strictly for the lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with lifestyle, but strictly from the lifestyle standpoint, immediate gratification, they're willing to blow that dollar. And just, you know, whatever it is, they just want it now, and they got to have the best of the best, and that's all fine and dandy, but you're going to choose at this point in time between a balance that allows you to have great things now and wealth and then freedom in the future, or just great things now. So I think frugality and saving your money and spending it on investments and education and things that give you high returns is a point that we definitely have in common. I think most rich people, there's no way, would you agree, Keith, that there's no freaking way that someone can get rich if they have an immediate gratification sweet tooth?
I agree. I think instant gratification it's even a bigger picture than that. I mean, one of the things I've thought about, Harv, is that when I look at the root of all my problems, and I don't care whether it's around money or anything else, one of the root cause of all my problems, lurking near the root is instant gratification. And certainly instant gratification in terms of building wealth. I mean, the two don't mix. You know, it's interesting you said what you said about the limo driver. One of the examples that I use when I talk to people is a latte a day. And a latte a day, you know, $3.50, not that big a deal. Is $1,000 a year over 30 years. That's $30,000 you don't have. Whereas if you would have invested it at 8%, you instead of not having $30,000, what you would have is $250,000. And one of the things that I'm addicted to is lattes. And every day I go get a latte, and every day I think about that holy cow, I mean, I'm in the process of giving up $250,000, and I can afford it. But it still makes me crazy.
Yeah, it makes me crazy too. I don't know. I just don't like. I'll give you just the smallest examples, little things like, and this is where again we want everyone to understand how rich people think. We're not saying that every rich person thinks like this, but I would say more think like this than don't.
I agree.
And literally, like, I'm getting a massage tomorrow. I've been on the road for a couple of weeks now, and I have a choice of a 50-minute massage or an 80-minute massage, and it's expensive where I do this. I live in the Boulders, and we have a very nice, you know, one of the highest class spas in the nation, the Golden Door, and it's I think $120. No, it's $130 for a 50-minute massage. It's $180 for an 80-minute massage. Now my daughter's coming in, so for sure I got to get her the 80 one. But I got to tell you what, I'm getting a big one for myself. But the 180 just kills me. I go, I can't believe I'm going to spend this kind of money for a massage. It's ridiculous. You know, it's like $50 more than I should be spending. And literally, I got to tell you the truth. If my daughter wasn't coming in and I was doing this myself, I'd only get myself the 50-minute one. It's not that I don't feel I deserve it. It's just that it bugs me to give away money more than I have to. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I agree. I agree with that.
So I want everybody to get that, and not that we're cheapskates, okay, because we're going to spend money. But listen, you know, watch your pennies. Invest your pennies. Use them for education, where things get returned back to you. Again, every penny is a seed that can come back tenfold or 100-fold if you use it properly. So number one rule, one of the things that Keith has brought out here in his blueprint is that he had frugal parents and he learned that good habits. And the other big thing was along the same lines is managing your money properly, because he said right away that when he was 12 years old that his dad did him a favor and gave him a ledger to keep track, and keeping track is another way of managing your money, and that's, of course, something we've talked about before. And if you've fallen off the jar system, by the way, my friends Keith, they're on this jar system that allows them to manage money very easily. And if you've fallen off it, make sure you get back on it. You swear to yourself right now, put your hand on your heart, and can make a commitment. Say, I'm beginning the JAR program again, or I'm doing better at it and increasing it the minute I get off this phone. And I promise you, if you do that, things will radically take a new shape for you. So let's go on, Keith. What were some of the other things that you would say that you picked up when you were young that affected your life now, as far as your conditioning process around money?
One of the things that I picked up was and this one I rebelled against. It's interesting. My parents were totally risk averse. They abhorred risk, and there were all kinds of opportunities that they had. And over the years, I heard them bemoan the fact, "Oh God, I wish we would have done this. Oh man, we should have done that deal." And one of the things that I think I rebelled when I read your book, Harv, which is excellent. I started thinking about my blueprint, and that's where I first started thinking about some of this stuff. And I thought, you know what, I did rebel against that, and maybe the reason I rebelled against it is because I saw, and they haven't changed. Both my parents are still alive. They're in their 80s. And they still look back, and one of them will punch the other one over the dinner table and say, we should have bought that piece of property in 1953. and so they're always looking back, and there's always this regret. And I think one of the things that I learned, and they never said don't take risk, and they never said do take risks. They didn't ever give me any advice. I just saw that I think the message that I got is that you got to risk in order not to fail, if that makes sense. In other words, the only people who wind up truly failing are the people who never took any risk.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it, and I probably went overboard because I was a risk hound for probably the first 15 or 20 years, probably 15 years of my career. And I took outlandish risk and actually made a fortune from doing that, and I also lost a fortune from doing that. So, but
I guarantee you learned.
Oh, the whole, and that's a whole different story. But the learning from losing the money was probably more than I learned when I was making the money.
Well, again, here's the thing, though, that people don't get, that it's all a process of learning. Again, every master was once a disaster. You have to learn how to do everything you're doing, whether it's investment or business or any other vehicle that you're trying to create wealth with. And here's what I'm getting out of this, everyone wants to hopefully write down, is that no risk, no learning.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to take a risk, you're not willing to do anything. You can't learn anything, my friend, sitting on your butt. It doesn't work like that. You have to go out there and take a shot. And, so yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. And it's going to be uncomfortable mentally, emotionally, and maybe physically for sure, and financially. And, yeah, that's just the way it is. That's the way you grow. For example, I was at my lunch today, and one of my attorneys was with us, and he's working on some very, 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 very big deals, bigger than I've even imagined in forever. And I question myself sometimes while I'm here, and I'm going, wow, can could I really pull this off? My God, I mean, this is huge, and I'd have to be like so great on TV, and I've never hardly done any TV. I know where to look at the camera, and you know, and then another voice comes in and says, you know what, Harv, you'll learn how to do it. Just get out there, start practicing, take every interview you possibly can in front of a camera. You'll learn how to do it. You'll be great. If you're not great today, you'll be great tomorrow. If not tomorrow, the next day. Okay? You put your intention on it. You'll learn how to do it. You don't have to be perfect right now. You don't have to be perfect ever. Just keep going for it. Just keep saying yes. Keep saying yes. Keep saying yes. One of the things I've been doing in my evenings lately is I ask people, how many of you have something going on in your life right now that you feel uncertain about? You're not sure if you should do it or not, whatever. And I am with 1,000 people a night, Keith. So every single time, 1,000 people raise their hand. And then I shout out, just do it.
Right. Don't
think about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfectly prepared. Just do it, because you will learn so much more in the doing of it, whether it goes well or mediocre or even not so well, than sitting around and thinking about it. One of my favorite sayings that I use all the time is one that I created a while ago, and that is that one step in the right direction is worth 100 years of thinking about it. And you know what, too, Chris? You talk about regrets. Here's another quote that I think people really have to realize is that you will never regret what you did as much as what you didn't do.
Yeah.
And I hear my parents, there's not an older person, a senior hardly, on this planet who doesn't do what your parents do and regret about they didn't do this and they didn't do this and they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And if you go for it and you make a mistake, then you know what? You'll make it back.
Yep, I agree. One of my favorite sayings is most people tiptoe through life only to arrive at death's door safely.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. And I totally agree that I'm not an advocate of wild-eyed, harebrained risk, but I am an advocate of anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. And what most people think is anything worth doing is worth doing well or worth doing perfectly, and that's really the way I was taught growing up. Is that pretty is as pretty does, and if you're going to do it, then do it well. And yet when I look at it, everything that I know how to do well today, the first time I did it horrible. And so that's really what you're saying too, and something I admire about you, Harv, is that you're somebody who practices what they preach, and you're saying, one of the things that you're about, for example, in your television show opportunities is, look, I mean, I may not do it well, but shoot, I'm willing to go do it poorly, and I'll get better. And I think that's a key thing, is the willingness to make mistakes in terms of a secret almost to wealth or to success, is the willingness to make a mistake, pick yourself up and dust yourself off and say, good, what'd I learn?
Absolutely. So let me ask you a couple more questions here. So we've kind of got your background. It was really good that your parents were frugal. They were decent money managers. And again, here's really something that's interesting from your blueprint is that you took the parts that worked for you from your parents around the frugality and keeping track and things like that, and you rebelled against the parts that weren't working for them.
Yeah.
And you put those two together, and that's one of the reasons that you're rich, because had you taken on, what I'm saying is that when you get a blueprint, when that's installed in you, you're going to get a lot of information. And it's going to be still up to you whether you take that installation and lock it in or you let it go. Because not everything that is said to you necessarily or you see is what you decide, yeah, I'm going to take this in, and this is the way I'm going to live my life.
Yeah. So,
it was really great that you were able to check out what your parents had done with you and then say, yeah, this one works, I'll keep it, and this one doesn't work, I'll dump it. And it's the same as I attempt to go with all my students and have them understand is that, look, you've been installed with information. That's your blueprint. That's your financial thermos. That's just the way it is. And yet you have a right to examine those files like we do and take a look at them and say, listen, the way I'm thinking, write them all down, all that stuff in your head, the way I think about money, wealth, rich people, all these beliefs we talked about here, risk and money management, what do I really think about this? And then check it out and then say, do I really want to think this way about that? Because you have a choice. You can just drop a thought very quickly. As I say to people all the time, Keith, is that it doesn't take ages to change a belief. Again, if you trusted somebody and then you trusted them for 20 years, and all of a sudden you found out they screwed you last night by doing something really wicked, tomorrow you don't trust them. I mean, how long does it take for you to go from trust to distrust? About 8 seconds as soon as you find out, right?
Right.
So literally you could take a look at a way of thinking and go, look, that just doesn't support me. It's nonsense, and go to something that does work. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about what I want to talk about is something around the specific kind of thoughts and feelings, or thoughts especially that you have in your head that you believe are what have led you to your financial success. So not strategies here, like you're an expert negotiator, I know that, but what thoughts do you have running around in your head that you believe have been very helpful for you in your success?
I think one of the most key thoughts, and what I'm about to say is going to be somewhat controversial, so let your audience just know that, and let me finish it before they revolt. One of the key thoughts is that money is like a woman, and the thought that I have is that if you don't treat it, if you don't tell it it's important, if you don't treat it like it's important, if you don't tell it it's important, if you don't tell it that it's beautiful every single day, it will leave you. Money is like a man. If you don't stroke it, if you don't tell it that it's important, if you don't tell it that he's a stud and all the things, then he will leave you. Money is like a relationship. Money is like health. In other words, if you ignore health, if you say health is unimportant, and it doesn't really mean that much to me, health will leave you if you don't pay attention to it every single day. And so to me, one of the key thoughts for me is that people who say that money is unimportant, A, don't have any, and B, will lie about other things too. I really do think that money is a fact of life. It is important. I don't think it solves all the world's problems. I don't think it's more important than health. I don't think it's more important than relationships. But I do think it's important, and I think the thought that we have sometimes around the subject of money can actually cause money to leave, or it can become a money attractor. And I know that you talk about some of that same stuff too. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things too is that a lot of people, when they get into a position of when they're not doing as well as they'd like to be doing, they begin to resent the idea of money. So it's like, since I'm not doing so great, I'll just like piss on the whole thing, excuse my language. Like who wants to go through all this stuff? I just be happy with what I've got and I'll make do, and I don't want to even go for it anymore.
It's my karma.
Yeah, exactly, my karma, whatever. But like what you're saying here is and what I'm saying is you can't give up. You don't want to give up because, like you say, they'll lie about other things too, but you'll do that with everything too.
Yep.
Yeah, don't forget that money is one of the ways that you measure your own growth. In other words, it's about who you have to become rich, to become successful enough in any endeavor in order to create wealth from it. So one of the key things that we always talk about with my guys is literally the understanding that you got to keep working on you, keep growing you. And what you're talking about here, money being like a woman, you got to treat it this and do that, is really that money is energy, and you have to treat it like any other energy. You do need to focus on it. Although, let's talk about this for a second. This is important. People ask me this all the time. Do you focus on making money, or do you focus on creating success?
I focus on adding value. The people that I know that are the wealthiest and the people that do the most are the people in terms of earnings. Those people I find are the people who add the most value, and I guess that's a roundabout way of saying what you just said, is that by adding value, they're focusing on success, not only their success, but probably more importantly, the success of the people that they're serving or they're selling to.
I agree 1,000%. I think that most people, it's just really this catch-22, isn't it, for a lot of people? Because I know I was one of those people. It's like, you're stuck. You're financially, you're not doing well. So where's your mind go? It goes to doing better financially. So all you can think about is, how am I going to make some money? I got to pay the rent. I got to be able to do this. I want to go on a vacation. I promised my kids. I don't even have enough right now. Maybe I should borrow, whatever. So you end up focusing on you and making money. And I know for myself, Keith, it's definitely the exact same agreement that you focus on adding value for people. And definitely, for me, it's about creating and focusing on being more successful. In other words, I want things to work. In other words, when a seminar occurs, for example, I want people to walk out of there going, that was like an amazing seminar, incredible.
Yeah.
And of course I ask what the numbers were. I say, well, how do we do financially? Do we make any money? Like, what was our numbers? But I don't even ask the numbers to find out what we did that time. I ask the numbers to find out if we had a successful event compared to what we've had. Like, for example, if I do an event where there's 1,000 people in the room and I do X amount of numbers revenue per person, then it's not the number. I don't even add it up. I just want to compare how I'm doing in comparison to how we have been doing, and are we growing or are we going down, and what's the correction that needs to be made? And from my own point of view. And of course, when I walk into any seminar, I'm only going there whether it's 200 or 1,000 or 2,000. It's, can we change some people's lives tonight?
Yeah.
And right now, like, again, the publisher is saying, we want something new from you. It's got to be about money, but it's got to be this, it's got to be different. And my feeling is that, we can change even more people's lives with this money blueprint. It will just stay there for a bit, And so literally, I agree with you 1,000%. For everybody, the lesson is, put your attention on helping others. One of the things, again, I do in the evening is, Keith, is I let people know that one of the homeworks that they have, and again, if you haven't been to the evening for a while, I want you to come back and so you can see it, but one of the homeworks that we give people in this playing the money game to win is that to create a way, starting immediately as fast as possible, to help 10 times as many people as you're helping now. So what that means is that, again, one of the definitions we use of an entrepreneur or a business person is a person who solves problems for profit or for pay. So what that means is your job is to be what? A problem solver. And so you need to solve more problems for more people. And you create a system or a leverage system or a strategy for doing that. So if if you have a database right now of 1,000 people and you're helping 1,000 people, then you need to get a database of 10,000 people as quickly as possible. If you have 10,000, make it 100,000. If you have a store with 20 people walking in a day and buying something, you got to have 200 people walking in a day. So how can I do that in my store? Have 10 stores. So literally, it's like you say, it's about believing in what you do, and that's another big one, isn't it?
Yes.
Believing in what you do, knowing that you're really solving people's problems, choosing to do that, and choosing to solve them in a much bigger way.
I think you've hit on something on this whole success. The way you're describing success is I'll take it one step further and apply it to me, and that is, to me, this whole business of adding value is about growth. It's about a solutions orientation, a solutions focus. And every time I focus on growth, I wind up getting excited. And every time I focus on my problems, I wind up kind of getting depressed.
Well, in our wizard training, we say focus on what you want, not on what you don't want.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, to me, this whole thing around success is, I mean, to me, money is the applause that you get from customers, and I mean, the louder the applause, the more money you're going to get, and that all has to do with adding value and growing and a solutions orientation.
So let me ask you this question. So many people have obstacles in their life. We all have obstacles in our lives. Give us an example of what runs through your head when an obstacle comes in front of you, problems come in front of you. What goes through your head when you're in front of challenges like that?
Probably the main thing that goes through my head is I look on the other side of the obstacle and try to figure out if leaping this thing is where I want to end up. In other words, every time an obstacle comes up, for me, there's going to be a certain amount of energy and a certain amount of effort and time and sometimes investment, maybe in terms of money or otherwise, that has to go into try to solving this particular problem. And some problems are that might come up are simply not worth the effort. For example, in one of the companies that I own, I recently had somebody that was stealing money from me. And they wound up over a period of maybe 75 or 100 days. They clipped me for maybe $3,000, $3,500. I had to make the choice, and I found out, and I fired them, and I had to make the choice as to whether or not I was going to pursue that particular problem. And ultimately, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. Even though I know that I'll never get my money back, I'm unwilling to let them simply walk away scot-free. And so I hired the lawyers and reported it to the police. In fact, today I was in court for an hour and a half. And so that wasn't really an obstacle as much as it was.
So what's the thinking behind that, Keith? So what is it about you? What's the thinking behind that? Is it about, would you say that it's about making certain that people understand about integrity? Would you say something to that effect?
I think that's part of it, but I think part of it, and I used to not do
holding
this.
people accountable? What is it for you?
Yeah, and that's part of it too. I used to not do this. This is a relatively recent behavior pattern because I've owned businesses for all my life, and I own a bunch of them, and I've done a lot of investing. And just in the last 4 or 5 years, I've probably said, you know what, I'm unwilling to simply lay down and take it anymore when people do that to me. And so I've become much more aggressive. On the other hand, I've got another situation where I did a deal with a guy, and he clipped me for a lot of money, way into 6 figures, and he took bankruptcy. And I could fight the bankruptcy, but that's one my attorneys told me it would cost probably over $100,000 to fight. And I ultimately said, you know what, I'm unwilling to spend that money and that time and effort on that one. So, it feels like when you ask me that question, Harv, when you ask me that question, I mean, my brain starts scanning, and I say, you know what, sometimes I choose to spend the time and the energy to leap the obstacle or solve the problem, and other times I say, you know what, lesson learned, move on.
So one of the ways that we can summarize that might be is that you focus on the bigger things. And for the most part,
yes,
you choose whether it's worth getting into. So another way of saying that is choose your battles wisely.
Yep.
And a lot of people listening to this call right now, I bet you, they don't really take a look at the energy necessary in most battles, if you want to call it that way, in most situations. And plus, a lot of our guys haven't heard me talk about this, but I used to talk about this all the time, and it's called the law of maintenance. And what that means is that everything you get involved in, everything you say yes to, there's not only going to be what it is, there's going to be all this before it and after it and maintaining it. So it's like, it's almost like having getting a dog, okay? You have to think of every situation is like you're getting a dog. Oh, my God, it's so cute. It's a little puppy. I want one of those things. I got to have it. And then it's great. It's so playful, and I love playing with it. And then you got to go out of town, and it's like, uh-oh, now what do I do, right? And then you got to go get the food. So I'm not saying anything negative about it, but I say there's maintenance to all energy. So check that out. I want to, I guess, add my 2 cents to that. And I would say that when obstacles come before me, I used to not do this when I was broke, but now I can see one of the biggest differences in the way I think now from when I was broke is that when obstacles are in front of me, of course they're not comfortable, but I do take a look at it and go, listen, if this is going to take you out, anything will take you out. Harv, you got to be bigger than your problems. You teach that. You got to be bigger than this. And again, that there's no problem unless I make it a problem. That the situation is not a problem until I deem it so by my perception and my meaning of it. And so I'm not going to make this a huge problem. I'm just going to, and again, one of the biggest things for me is understanding that one of the differences between rich people and poor people is that rich people are willing to handle the big problems as they come up, and whereas poor people get taken out by them. And so let me ask you a question here. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Let me ask you a question. What would you say is a way that you think now that you are very wealthy versus when, you had times when you weren't doing too good? What is a different one way that you think very differently? You can look back and go, you know what? When I was not doing well, I thought this way. But now that I'm doing well, I don't think that way at all. I think this way.
One of the key things I think, and the way I think today, is because I have made a bunch of money and lost it and then made a bunch of money again, I have figured out that there's 2 different skill sets. One is how to make it. The other one is how to keep it.
Right.
And I I think I have always been very good at making money. In fact, by the time I was 30, I was a multi-millionaire, and by the time I was 35, I was well over $20 million of cash in my hip pocket. So I had a lot of money at a very early age. And one of the things that I thought at that time was I got confused about the difference between skill and luck. And on the one hand, I did have a lot of skill, and I still have a lot of skill. But on the other hand, at the time I was making in my 30s when I was making an enormous sum of money, I was also very lucky. And I'm much more aware today, and I'm still lucky. I'm not saying that luck doesn't play a part, but I'm much more cognizant of realizing that luck is not a sustainable strategy for success. In other words, repeatedly relying on luck, even though I know that there's an element of luck in everything. But a lot of times I think we make our own luck. So today I would say, because I'm the age I am, because I've been through a bankruptcy, a personal bankruptcy when I was in 1991, where I had lost all my money because I had invested in real estate in Texas and in the 1980s. And if you invested in real estate in Texas in the 1980s, and I had about $200 million worth of real estate in the 1980s, and that caused a severe problem. That I was personally liable on all that debt, and it was a huge mess. And one of the things I came out of that with was, you asked about differences in thoughts. One obviously is that recognize the difference between making it and keeping it. I'd say another crucial thought, and this is something I think that fouled me up, and actually was very depressing. It was very depressing. It was a horrible time to be me, Harv, in 1991. And one of the thoughts that I had leading into that was that my net worth and my self-worth were the same thing. And I had to do a lot of work on that to jump over that hurdle. And basically I came out the other side saying, wait a second, and you talk about this in your book a lot. I mean, what I do does not define who I be. Who I am as a person and as a human being and as a man and as a husband and a father has nothing to do with how much money I have. And so, right, I had to do a lot of work on separating my self-worth and my net worth, and it's still a struggle. I mean, I won't deny that. I still get fed by success, but I try not to be a glutton on it, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's a great point, because literally what happens is that people who combine those, self-worth and net worth, what happens is then you go up and down like a yo-yo. When your money's good, you're good. When your money's down, you're down. And here's the problem. It's the law of momentum, isn't it?
Yep.
So what happens is if things are going well, you're feeling great about yourself, and it's kind of normal to do that, and you're really on a roll, and you're willing to take action and stuff. But if you really attach the two when things aren't going so great, then you feel crummy. You don't want to do anything. You don't want to take action. You don't want to talk to anybody. And this is where like our warrior trainings and things like that need to come into play. This is where you need to take control of your own mind and manage your mind so that it's not taking you out. Because any discussion about your self-worth is a mental, excuse my way of saying this, is simply mental masturbation. There is no discussion about self-worth. One of the questions that someone asked here along the same lines, Linda, had said that, Harv, I'm learning to admire rich and successful people, but I'm having a hard time believing I can be one of them. And she basically says that, it's something that only certain people are smart enough and lucky enough to do. And, she doesn't really understand whether she deserves it or not. And so it's along the same thing. So to Linda, one of the things I want to say, and you'll hopefully have something to add to it, is that I believe this, that if you grow yourself, if you just work on growing you and being the best you can be, and work on yourself every day, whether it's meditation, whether it's your health and fitness, whether it's again, learning and growing. If you work on you and your own mind and your knowledge and things like that, again, every master was once a disaster. If you work on you, you'll feel good enough about yourself and just who you are that you will attract a lot more opportunities to you. Because a lot of people, isn't it true, Keith, and don't you see this all the time because you teach also, that people come up to you and they want to do business with you, but they got like the worst energy on the planet.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't go near it. You don't want to be infected by them. You know what I'm saying? Because they look down, and we have a program called Secrets of Influence coming up, which you know about. And people are going to understand how they actually influence people unconsciously, especially to the negative element. So you know what? I said it before. I said it again. You are naturally worthy, okay? You were born worthy. You'd never be breathing right now if you didn't have a place on this planet. Get rid of all that other junk in your head that's been installed there, and just keep on working on you so that you grow into feeling worthy enough. You know, when you are just kind of lazing around the TV and not doing anything and not taking any action and just feeling sorry about yourself, and your mind is negative, you don't feel good. Of course you don't. That's where you have to take control, work on you, work on your mind, work on your optimism, work on thinking in ways that are focusing on what's working for you instead of against you, and get your mind off of yourself and get it on to helping somebody else.
I agree. One of the best sayings, and I wish I knew who said it. You may know who said it. I didn't make this up, but the saying is, work hard on your job, make a living, work hard on yourself, and make a fortune.
I like it.
And I think the hardest work that any of us will ever do is the work that we do on ourselves. It's way harder work, and yet it's the work, I think, that'll make all the difference. And it's the work that I had to do in the early 1990s. I wound up taking an 18-month sabbatical. I didn't know how long the sabbatical was going to be, but when I started, but it turned out to be 18 months. And I basically did, in that 18 months, I read a couple hundred books and did lots and lots of therapy and meditation, and I still do meditation, and I read a ton. One of the things I heard one time, and I think this is very true, imagine a 10-story apartment building. And suppose in 9 of those stories you have God-fearing, honest, hard-working families. And in one story out of that 10-story office apartment building, it's the one story is filled with crack cocaine dealers. In 6 months, the entire building will be filled up with crack cocaine. In other words, it doesn't take very much, and your mind is like that, I think. It doesn't take very much of your mind to be slip-sliding and doubtful and in your influence course, I mean, that you're talking about, Harv, which sounds very powerful, to wind up being drugged down, and if only 10% of your mind is filled up with that garbage, it isn't long before it literally takes over the entire building.
Absolutely, and this is what people do with us. And again, people are asking questions about deservedness and this and the other thing. Don't believe your own voice. Yes. That voice is not the voice of reason. That voice is a voice of programming. That's all that is. And anything that your mind, again, I'm going to remind you guys about the process called power thinking. And all you do is every single thought that comes into your mind, you designate it as a empowering thought or a non-empowering thought. And if it's an empowering thought, you allow it to stay. If it's a non-empowering thought, you simply say, thank you for sharing. Don't give it any more energy. Don't wallow in it. Don't think about it. Don't think maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. Get out of the cycle. Just say cancel, pass, and come back to the present moment. What am I doing right now? Well, I'm walking out the door, going to my car, and I'm taking these steps right here. All I'm saying is this, again, the longer you stay thinking in your mind, especially when it's on a downturn, which is, it's given enough time, like 10 seconds, and it will be, the longer you stay invested in that mind, in that thinking process, if it isn't thinking about something empowering, it will take you down to the deepest dregs of the earth. And then it's even harder to get momentum to get out of it, yes? So here's the thing. Divide your thoughts into 2 categories. Every single thought, be the witness. Observe what's going on in your mind. Remember, the thoughts that are bubbling up, they're not you. They're just bubbling up. oh, here's a thought. This is oh my God, there's like only, I wanted to do so much more in this interview. There's only like 8 minutes. Oh my God, I wonder if we're going to give people enough value. And I'm not sure if this was good enough. And geez, am I going to be able to finish on time? And maybe I should change things around for next time. And you hear the way the mind works. I'm just making that up, of course. But that is the way a mind would work, wouldn't it?
Sure.
And so what do you say? You say, hey, cool your jets, man. Everything's just fine. What am I doing? I'm talking to Keith. I'm talking to hundreds of other people. Let's give them some value. Let's do the best we can. And just stay with empowering thoughts or present moment thoughts, and any thought that is not a thought that is empowering to your happiness or your success, simply say, cancel or thank you for sharing and let it go, and do not invest in any moment. As Robert Allen says many times, he says, remember, no thought lives in your head rent-free. I'll say it again. No thought lives in your head rent-free. You pay for every thought, whether it's positive or negative, and the positive ones are investments, and the negative ones, you'll pay for them.
Yep, I agree.
Let's take another question here while we have a little bit of time still left, and that is, we've had a couple of questions, one by Carolyn and one by Kira, and both of them were concerned about not having enough time to get rich or successful. One of them says, I'm terrified that, Carolyn says, I'm a grandmother, I'm terrified if I take the time to make my million, it'll take time away from my grandkids. And Kira says that she works 40 hours a week. She's got a 20-hour commute. She gets up at 6 a.m. in the morning. She doesn't come back till 10 p.m. She's got that till whatever. She's baked the entire time, and she says she needs to dedicate some time to create some new source of income so she can quit her job. But it feels like a catch-22. So she still wants to have a life, and she says she needs a miracle. What do you have to say to people like this?
I don't think it takes a miracle. I think far from it. I think there's always enough time. I think the only issue is one of priorities, and whether or not the priority, which I don't have a judgment on, whether or not what those priorities look like. I think the definition of balance is that it's a process. It isn't a state. In other words, I don't think we suddenly get into balance. When things are if your life is in perfect balance, you're dead. That's the only point in time in your whole life that you'll be in perfect balance. So,
thanks for saying that, Keith, because I've had trouble with this my whole life. I'm alive, boy. I'm alive.
You're not dead. I mean, it's a process, and from the outside, what you see, if I looked at your life, I might say, well, it looks like you're in balance. But you look like, from the inside, you look like you're scurrying back and forth. Well, of course that's the way it's going to look, because you're constantly juggling priorities. I think, big picture, whatever it is you want in your life, whether it's money or being with your grandkids or whatever all that looks like, all of which I'm in favor of, there's a price to be paid. There's a sacrifice. I mean, no matter which way you decide to go, there's going to be some trade-off that is required. And the only question is not whether or not you can have it. The only question is whether or not you're willing to make the trade and pay the price. This is a Spanish proverb that I heard one time, and I absolutely love it. It goes like this. It says, God said, take anything you want, but pay for it first. And I think that's true. I think that it requires, if you want it, well, good. I mean, there's going to be a trade-off. And now the question is, can you make the trade and have both and, as opposed to, and you talk about this in your book, Harv, I love your example on why in the world would you have cake if you can't eat it? And I think that's whether you're dealing with money or you're dealing with your life. I mean, to me, a definition of a successful life is having different problems next year than you have this year. And so if you're in the process of growing, if you're in the process of working on it, regardless of whether or not you've already achieved it, I think that is, the achievement part is relatively immaterial to me. It's the process of, and as you said, who do I have to become to have what I want? Yeah,
absolutely. I want to say that, like to Carolyn, who said that she's a grandmother, she's afraid she takes time to make her million, she'll take time away from her grandkids. Listen, Carolyn, you are the model for those grandchildren. And again, what Keith is saying is that You need to create a way, and we'll talk to you a little about this too, create a way that you have both, so that your kids don't, A, rule you, and secondly, they don't see that everything else goes out the window when you have grandkids or any other thing come around, that they learn that there's priorities and that they are part of those priorities, that they are huge priorities, but they are not the only thing in life.
Yeah.
And for Kira, I would say, this understanding about she's just completely overwhelmed, which is, I can feel the frustration in her. But the first thing I would say is that in the Success Tracks program, we work a lot on these things called double diamonds and diamonds. So another way of saying that is called the Big Rocks process, Keith, in case you're familiar with it, which is simply choosing your few priorities first. Let's say she says about nurturing herself and exercising and pieces like that, and you put those in what we call the big rocks, or the big priorities of your life. You have to install them on at least a monthly calendar first before you do anything else. So you say, I want time with my kids, and this is the same with Carolyn, with her grandkids. I want time with my kids, and you schedule it. And I want time with myself and working out, and you schedule it. And I want time to create a new vehicle, to start working in a new vehicle so I can quit my job, a passive income-based vehicle or a wealth-building vehicle, and you schedule it. Now, you might then what you do is you have those specific, what they call big rock periods in place. And you might only do, for example, at the beginning, only 1 hour a week where you're either researching or working on your new arena to get it started. And that's all you can muster up. But that hour will give you what? Momentum, so that a month later you might be able to squeeze in 2 hours. And then a month later, maybe 3 hours a week. And so you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start with a priority. You've got to schedule, again, the word is schedule, into a monthly planner, those big rocks. You must keep them as committed appointments. That means that you are out of integrity if you break one, and you must reschedule with agreement. And if you do that more than once, you're not allowed to move anything more than once. And then you can do whatever your normal life, day-to-day life, which is the errands and the work and all that kind of stuff, every other time. You have literally whatever, all the rest of the time of the month to do that kind of stuff. But you feel good because you've scheduled your big rocks and you are taking care of those, and you feel great about it. And so what I would say to all these guys, literally, if you don't have the time, you've got to create the Big Rocks plan, and then you've got to chunk it down and create a plan, and your Big Rocks will give you a plan so that you can use, and then you just take one step at a time and you work through it. Like you say, balance is a process, and you're never going to be perfect.
I agree.
Anyways, let's see here. Well, we're running a little to the end of this talk here, and I'd love to finish this off with a scenario here. So, Keith, you've had a fantastic life, and it's your time to go. You're an old guy. You've lived a full life, and you're sitting in your rocking chair on the porch, and you don't have that much longer to go. And you're going to share a single secret about financial success that you want to pass along to people, maybe to your own children or to people that you care about. Just one secret that you want to pass along that people have to remember. What would that be?
Think. To me, money is, and creating wealth is about the intellect. It has nothing whatsoever to do with emotions. And the people that I know that use their emotions to make their money decisions are all broke or on their way there. The money process, building wealth, is a I forgot who said this. It's a game of math. It's an intellectual process, and too often I see, and this is something I'm going to be talking about a little bit at your Millionaire School, Harv, coming up in Vegas, and hopefully a bunch of these people that are on this call will be there. But one of the things I'm going to talk about is the importance of keeping your emotions away from your money and keeping it away from your investing. And too often I see people invest with their glands and their emotions and their gut as opposed to their intellect. And money is an intellectual process. And every time that I've used my emotions and my gut and my glands to make my money or investment decisions, I've rued the day. So if I was going to give one piece of advice to as an old man, which I just about am, to my children or to your audience, I'd say, look, think, use your brain, be skeptical, ask questions, know what you're getting into with your investments, and think it through, because the reality is the key to wealth is compounding. And anybody who winds up swinging for the fences winds up with an extremely poor batting average.
That sounds really good. I agree with you 1,000% on that. Emotions are good in some places, and when it comes to money and especially investments and especially business, it's not a good idea. I get so many people, Keith, who they want to be really good people, so they make stupid decisions for customers. They make stupid decisions in buying things. They can't say no to people. And this is what really screws them up. They're either too nice or they're real jerks, and they say no to everybody.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So literally, I think what Keith is saying is again, use your mind from the standpoint of versus your emotions. If you feel any fears, if you feel guilt, if you feel greed, like for example, on the if you have to make a very quick decision, for example, because they're saying, well, all the condos are being sold out right now. If you don't come this weekend and buy right now, you're never going to get one, and you're gonna feel bad for the rest of your life and all that. And so literally, it's okay for them to say that. That's not a problem, and it may be accurate, but you're the one who has to sit there and think about it and say, listen, what do I really feel the value of this is going to be in 5 years or 10 years? And I'll say this right now because we're going to talk a lot about this in Millionaire School, but if there is a downturn in the economy, if there is a downturn in the market, do I have the wherewithal to ride it out?
Yeah.
Or will this suffocate me? So one of the things people talk about the bubble and this, and we're going to talk about this extensively at Millionaire School. So many people are excited about it. But, I say bubble schmubble because it doesn't matter. In the end, real estate always goes up, whether it takes 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. Even in Texas, it'll probably come back up.
Oh, it's come way back.
Yeah, exactly. So literally, the only question you have to ask yourself is, have I structured this in a way where I can ride it out?
Yep.
And that's my feeling on it. Anyways, hey, Keith, you've been a fantastic guest.
Thank
you so much. Again, Keith is going to be with us, believe it or not, at Millionaire School as one of the primary instructors. He'll actually be on a couple of times teaching something very, very specific each time. And so for those of you who are coming there, fantastic. For those of you who are not, hopefully next time, or I don't know if you can still get in, call the office. I wouldn't even know. But I thank you so much for being on. And
thank you, Harv. I just want to acknowledge you and tell you how much I appreciate you and your message and the work that you're doing, and I'm humbled that you would consider having me on your teleshow and to have me at Millionaire School, and just know that I'm very excited and can't wait to do more teaching.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And we'll see you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Good. Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, for the rest of you guys, next week, same time, same place. I hope you tune in. Our guest is going to be another multi, and keep on multiplying a few times, millionaire. And one of the things that this gentleman who's going to be with us next week, again, his made his fortune in both business and in real estate and in several other arenas. And so, he's got a vast vat of knowledge to come from. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope that you're, taking it for what it's worth, which is if you can just glean one idea, just one thing of all the things that we talked about to focus on for the next week, this will be, I believe, worth your time over and over and over again. I hope you took some great notes. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to review your notes right now, because if you wait, you know you'll never do it, and you lose 80% of what you take in within 24 hours. So I want a commitment from everybody right now that you are going to take the notes that you made and you're going to read them through. Then you're going to pull at least one idea from there. You're going to write it on a separate piece of paper, and you're going to post that idea up for you to work on for the entire week. Hopefully you'll all do that. So thank you so much for being on the call. I'm not even sure if I can get back to where I'm hearing you. I'll try right now. Let's see. Hello? How you doing?
Thank you so much, Harv. I love you, Harv. We all love you, Harv. Thanks, Harv.
Hello.
You have a good dear mind.
Great. So, guys, did you enjoy that?
That's
That's a good one.
Okay, hey Keith, we have like the nicest people on the freaking planet.
Oh, they're wonderful. I loved it.
Oh, wait until you meet them at Millionaire School. These are like the nicest people you've ever taught, ever been in company with. They're just, everyone is willing. They're going for it. They're doing their best. Everyone's a little scared, of course, as usual. Everyone's got problems, but they're going for it, and they're really willing to learn. You're going to love these folks.
I am so excited.
Thanks a lot. Did you hear them just now?
I did. I mean, it's overwhelming. So it's all wonderful, wonderful work.
Yeah, thank you so much. And good night, everybody. Thank you so much. And hey, since this is our first one ever doing, why don't you do me a favor and email me your thoughts on it, whether you enjoyed it, give us a little comment and whatnot, and let us know so we know we're on the right track with you. We just want to assist you as best we possibly can. And again, this is your homework. I'm going to ask you to review your notes when? Right now, not later, now. Pull out one major piece that you want to focus on for the week. Write it on a separate piece of paper, paste that up on your wall or your mirror, and focus on that for the week, and you'll have 10 times your energy and your time you put in here. Good night, everybody. I'll see you next week, and I'll talk to you soon. I love you all. Bye for now.
Good night,
Good night, Keith. Good night. Take care, my friend.
All
Bye-bye.
right, thank you.
Bye-bye.